Good morning, everybody, and welcome to my coloring corner. This is Tips and Tricks Tuesday. And what we're going to do today is I'm just going to show you a couple of things that I have learned about pan pastels that you may know, you may not know. This may be old news to everybody else, but these are just things I have learned myself on how I use them and that sort of thing. Now, when you buy a set of pan pastels, they come with the bottom part of the stack as an empty case. And usually in the empty case is a couple of these and a couple of these and a couple of these. As you can tell, I have used these. And I have found that they're expensive. A little bit too expensive to be replacing every time you need to use them. Now, these ones here, they slip onto these spatulas, I guess you'd call them. And they're a little difficult to get on. They tear very, very easily. Personally, I don't like them. They're not easy to use. They don't go on very easily. They tear, they rub off. You end up, really mucking with it way too much. So normally what I do is I take these things and I see even getting it off is difficult. And I leave them in their little jars. The sponges, these bigger sponges, actually work really, really well. But like I said, they're expensive. And you just don't want to be spending a lot of money on something that you're going to throw away. And you can wash them and you can reuse them a few times, but then you end up with them looking like this. This is one of the squares, and I have used this a few times and I have washed it a few times, but this black doesn't come out of it. And what happens after you've washed it and you've used it and you've taken it off and putting it back on is these seams rip after a while. And I've put it on backwards. See, as you can see, they tear really, really easily. And I don't know if you can see this because I put it on upside down, but even after washing it, you can't get all of that color out. And you end up with a residue that is going to ruin your picture. So I'm going to show you a few things that I use. These, no. These, once in a while if I'm in a pinch. The little eyeshadow applicators that they come with are actually really good. And these I do use when I need to because they have a nice point on them. Other than that, the rest of it, I really don't use. What I do use are, I use these, which are just little foam finger dots that you can use to rub. So I use those. They're called finger sponges. They're made in China. You can buy them by the dozen on Amazon. Another thing that I do use, and I should have probably taken these out of the package so you didn't have to listen to the package. I use those. These you can also buy by the hundreds on Amazon. These are just normal throwaway eyeshadow applicators. They're inexpensive and you can throw them away. So I do use those. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. Maybe. Oh, I hate that. Another thing that I use, and I have noticed recently that these are no longer, you can actually buy one specifically for pan pastels. the set I bought, and I don't use all of them. I use quite a few of them, but there are some in here that I don't use. Oh, are makeup brush applicators. And these are the really dense, soft ones that that doesn't belong in there. These are the really dense, soft ones. I keep the little wrap on them because I have a dog and I don't want her dog hair in them. But they're really dense. They're really, really tightly done up. Like there's a lot of bristles in there. So it holds a ton of color. I use the really big ones for doing large areas. I use the smaller ones for doing small areas. I use the fans to do different clouds and different layers of fog and stuff like that. So I use these more than anything else. These and these are the majority of what I use for my pan pastels. Another thing I use a lot of, I'm going to put that out of the way, move these out of the way, because we're going to be using them here in a minute. Another thing that I use a lot of, good old eraser. Any old eraser works wonderfully. I have this one, and I also have a triangle one around here somewhere. Every time I see where it is, it gets moved. And I also use these as well, a really small point one, and the Faber-Castell's pencil, colored pencil eraser with the dust brush on the end. This dust brush has a very stiff bristle to it, so it actually works really well for putting lines in your pan pastels. Let's just throw that anywhere. All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look, and we're just going to play with a blank piece of paper, and we're going to do different sky types, different cloud types, things like that. Now, the first one I want to do is just a basic blue sky. So I'm just going to take this one here, because I'm not going to do the full sheet. I'm just going to do half of it, and then I'll do a night sky on the other side, I think. So we're going to fill this up nice and full, and we're just going to rub it all over. And we're going to get a nice layer of blue down. And once we get a nice layer of blue down, and we don't have a lot of dust left around, then you know it's embedded deep into your cardstock. Now, the only thing that I find with pan pastels is if you have any sort of moisture on the page at all, it will pick it up. And I must have at some point put my coffee cup down on my mat, and my page has absorbed it. So there's a bit of a ring there, which is fine because we'll use that. So now it's all nice and blue. We're going to go just rub it in a little bit deeper. Once it's all in there, we're going to take our dust brush, if I can find it. I know I just saw it. Uh-oh. I just saw it. I've got so much stuff all over my desk that I can't find anything anymore. Anyway, I don't know where my dust brush is, so I'm just going to do it this way and blow it off. So once we get the blue down, we have two different options that we can work with. We can make it a little bit of a deeper blue in different areas. So what we're going to do is just take a touch, just a touch of that deeper blue, and we're just going to blotch it in there in little areas. just like that. And you can do that with any color you want. I'm really irritated that I can't find that brush because I know I just saw it right in front of my face. And then just dust that off because yes, I found my brush. So once you get that all dusted off, you can take this wonderful stuff, and this stuff is not absolutely mandatory. However, it does help quite a bit. And it looks very, very white on the brush, and it will look white when you first put it down for a little bit. But it is a blender, and you put it down, and then you take your actual cloud color. Say you want to have a bit of a pink cloud. Area there. And of course, that's not going to show on camera because it's really light. So we're going to go a little bit darker just so that you can see it on camera better. And just say you want to put a little bit of a pink cloud there. Then you take your white, and I'm dirtying all my brushes here, and I don't usually do that. So usually I pick out 1 or 2 brushes and then I wash them. Then you take your white and you just go over top of it. And I've already put the blender down in some of these areas. So the blender is actually putting that white and that pink color together to make it look like a cloudy look. And you can do that with all sorts of colors. Now we're going to dust that off again. Do not rub your brush right on top of your color because you will end up brushing away the color if it isn't rubbed in enough. So say you want a very white cloud and your white isn't giving you enough of a white cloud. So what you do is you take your eraser, just a standard eraser, and you just do a cloud shape. And then dust it off. And it gives you that cloudy type of shape. Now, say you want to have a bit of sunlight up at the top here. So what you do is you take a nice yellow color and a smaller brush, sort of like this one here. Of course, I'm going to get that all over myself. And you just load up the brush a little bit and make sure that you give your clouds a bit of that yellow because your sun is going to be up here in this area. So what you do is you just fill that in with that yellow. Dust that off your cloud. Take a little bit of this red here. And you just rub it in. And that's basically all you do with your pan pastels is you're basically just building the colors and rubbing them into the paper. And once you get to a color that you want, like I want this to be yellow with a bit of red in it, not a bit of red with yellow in it. So once you get to a color that you want, and it looks the way you want it to look, then you take your duster brush and you dust it off. Now my area is getting kind of dusty here, but that's fine. Say you want to have a little bit of gray clouds. So you take your gray. I've got a nice darky blue gray here. And you just put in a couple of cloud-shaped areas. And as long as you haven't overly filled the page with that light blue, you should be able to, not dust that into your face, get a dark cloud effect. Now, if you find that you've dusted over or you've rubbed over an area that you don't want to have any color on, like a area that you've got coloring on or something like that, you can easily remove that with a eraser. Always have your eraser handy when you are working with pan pastels. That way you can either A, put clouds in the sky, B, get rid of areas that you don't want to be there. Like I would want to have this curved. So I'm just going to take off a little bit of it. It's down in here a little bit too much, so I'm just going to take a bit of that off. I don't want this on the side, so I'm just going to take it off. I don't want this down here, so I'm just going to take it off. And then you just dust it off. What I have found with the pan pastels is it is always, always, always good to test before you do. Know what you want to put down, like know what you want it to look like. And if it doesn't look like you want it to look, like for example, this cloud isn't looking the way I want it to look. So what I'm going to do with that cloud, after I dust those off, is I'm going to go back to my blue and I'm going to fill it in. Now, it's not going to give you the same depth of the blue because you've already got a blue layer down, and that blue layer is going to get darker because you're putting more blue on it. So you're going to end up with a lighter area in that area that you erased. So let's take a look and see how that looks. See if we like that. That's not too bad. Now, of course, like I said, if you mess it up, you can just erase it and go with something else. Or add more to it. You can keep adding to things as you go along to give it that look that you want it to have. If you don't like the look of it after all is said and done, you can turn it into one of those sky scenes of the setting sun or the rising sun or the aurora borealis. Anything like that you can do with pan pastels. Now, on this side that we have kept blank, I'm going to show you how I do, sorry about that, I'm reaching over everything here, how I do a night sky. So the first thing you do is make sure that this is clean. Make sure that your page is clean. Everything is off of it. And then you take your blue, your darkest blue that you have available. This is the darkest one I have. And it's nice and loaded up. That is a really, really blue. And I'm going to rub this in. Now you don't have to go in a circle. I just tend to because that's the way I color. You know, just go in all different directions. Make sure that that color gets into the paper. Okay, so once you have your blue in there, then you take your darkest gray. And you don't have to clean your brush after the blue because it's already down there. And you get a good heavy amount of that gray. And you can just slap it on there and get it built in. Now, one of the things that I do find works the best with this kind of color, with building up the blue and the gray and the blue and the gray, is if you have a fixative and you spray it down and then put another layer over top and then another layer. And I have been able to get quite a dark color with doing that. Now, when you get to a point where you think that's all the paper is going to take of the color, it may be all the paper is going to take. It all depends upon how toothy your paper is. I don't think this printer paper is very toothy because it's my ink paper that I use for markers and whatnot. Then you just dust it all together. And as I said before, make sure that your work area doesn't have any sort of wet spots, because as you can see with this dark here, my workspace at some point had some wet on it. Also, if you have gloves, you should wear your gloves, because you're going to find, and I'll show you just by where I was holding it down, you can see all my fingerprints are there because the oil's off of my fingers holding on to that page. Now, I don't know what I had on my desk, but obviously I had something on there because it has made a mess. So now what I do is I'm just going to get that excess off. And I've got a fairly dark space now. Now, I'm going to take my colorless blender, and I think I'll use this one. And I'm just going to load it up, and I'm going to go over the whole thing. Just like that. Now it's going to look a little bit white, which is fine. It will dissipate. It won't stay that way. And dust off the excess. Then we're going to come back in here with this brush, grab a little bit more, well, a lot more of the dark gray, and I think some more of that blue. And we're just going to rub it into that colorless blender and try to get that as dark as we can. And like I said, when you do this, if you find that it's not getting as dark as you want it to get, spray it down with a bit of fixative spray. Make sure it's a workable fixative. Do not use a sealing fixative, because then it's just going to slide right off and it's not going to do what you want it to do. And I have a lot of pigment on there, and I think that's pretty much as I'm going to get into the pores of this paper, because I think I grabbed the wrong paper. So we're going to dust that off. So we'll take a look at it here. Where's my duster? Duster brush. All right. So now we've got that a dark gray. I was hoping for more of a midnight sky color, and normally what you would end up with is a lot lighter or darker than that. So then what you can do is you can take your white, and this is white, it's not the blender, and you can put in your clouds. You can take your fan brushes here and go down here with your white and make mist. And that sort of thing. Now, of course, there's usually a picture, in front of all this, so it makes it a little bit easier. We can make this cloud a little more misty. Take a little bit of yellow here and do the moon. And then, when you're putting things like the mist over the cloud over the moon and that sort of thing, try not to press too hard. Don't rub it in. Otherwise, you're going to end up with the moon color in places you don't want it to be. But that is my tips and tricks on how I use pan pastels in my pictures. I use a lot of different applications. I use different brushes, lots and lots of different brushes. And when you're done with your brushes, because as you can see, this brush has picked up a lot of that blue-black color. You could probably just see the dust coming off of it. But when you are done with your brushes, take them over to your sink. Wash them with soap and water. Wash all of that pigment out. Because if you don't, the next time you go to use it, what's going to happen is you're going to be trying to do a nice light blue sky, and you're going to have yellow or gray or different colors in it that you don't want. So make sure, like as you can see, there's a lot left in that brush. Make sure that your brushes are not full of color. Wipe them off, brush them off, take them over to the sink and actually wash them with soap and water. If you are using makeup brushes, for example, these, you can use these to actually lift a bit of the color. So if you want, say, a cloud here, you can use that makeup brush to do that. And what it does is it just lifts that color up and removes it, just like an eraser would. Same with this. So you would use this the exact same way you would use this. You fill it up and you rub it in. Take this over to the sink and wash it. You can wash these out and reuse them about 7 or 8 times. And another thing that I would suggest, especially if you are like me, I have very, very oily fingers, or very oily skin, I should say. Make sure that you wash your hands really well before you start working with your pan pastels, and B, if at all possible, wear some sort of glove or something to protect keep your fingers off the edge of the paper where you're going to be working. So basically, see, I put the shiny blue on there and you just rub it in. I find these work the best if I'm doing small areas, or if I'm working with really, really toothy paper, because this actually pushes it in a lot harder than the brush does, because you're controlling the pressure with these. They're usually my first go-to, but if I'm doing an entire picture or an entire background, I will grab my brushes. But if I'm just doing a small amount of background, or just want a couple of different small colors in there. Sorry, my dog is acting like a cat and sounds like she's about to hack up a hairball. But if I'm just doing small amounts of color or small areas, I will use the finger stub, because, like I said, there's a lot more control there, and it gives the ability to put as much pressure as you want. Like, for example, I feel that there's just too much color there, so I'm just going to rub some of it off. So those are my tips and tricks on how to use your pan pastels, with doing backgrounds, with doing shadows, or not shadows, clouds and moons and mist and stuff like that. If you have any questions, any suggestions, anything like that, of course, like, comment, and subscribe. I always love hearing from you. Make sure that you put your questions in the comments, because I will answer them. I do go through and look at all the comments and do my best to answer them in the best way that I have possible. These are only things I use, things I do. It may be completely wrong. I may not be using them at all the way the manufacturer has expected you to use them. I don't ever, ever, ever say that I am 100% right. I'm saying this is what works for me. If it doesn't work for you, that, of course, is wonderful as well. Everybody has their own way of doing things. All I can do is give you suggestions on how I do it. If you make that suggestion any better, or come back and say, okay, I used what you did and I changed it this way and it worked out really nicely, give it a try. I am wide open to any of those types of suggestions or comments. Now, every Tuesday, we are going to have a tips and tricks segment. Different things that I have found, different little tricks that I use to enhance things or change things like that. So if you have any suggestions on different tricks that you want to see if I know how to do them, leave a comment in the section below, and I will do my best to either show you that I can do it, or show you that I can't. And if I can't, I would ask that you show me how. With that, thank you so much for watching. Again, have a fantastic day. Thank you for joining me on this Tips and Tricks Tuesday. Of course, like, comment, and subscribe. Always relax, color, and stay safe. Bye-bye for now.